Love measures our stature. The more we love, the bigger we are. There are no smaller packages in the world than a man all wrapped up in himself. William Sloane Coffin. Welcome to an excerpt from my book project, Schooled by the Smokies. Bigger is Not Better, Chapter 5. Well, my wife has often said that I'm a big thinker. That's a kind way of saying that I'm a dreamer. She's right. As a young boy, I dreamed of big things. Growing up in rural Alabama, I was never confined to a small space. My brothers and I could roam free without fear. We probably were naive to the real dangers that lay in wait for unsuspecting little boys. We rode our bicycles for miles and miles down country dirt roads, through open fields and along paths through the woods, the pine thickets that surrounded our little home on the hill. We explored narrow caves that we discovered. We swam in creeks and streams, hunted squirrels deep into the forest, and we dreamed of being race car drivers and brave soldiers and famous explorers. Our dreams were as big as the outdoors, where we lay on our backs and stared at the clouds and the stars high in the sky. And regardless of what we dreamed, big seemed to be great. The trail has a way of tempering my hunger for big things, perhaps immersing me in deep forest, and it's rows upon rows of mountains. The trail is schooling me in an important lesson, that bigger is not always better. As I slow down enough to see an industrious spider, or a fluorescent green tiger beetle, or a scampering squirrel, I become less focused on myself. It's one thing to hike 20 miles in 1 or 2 days a week, going home at night to dinner, to rest and sleep in the comfort of my own bed. It's another thing completely to hike through the ups and downs of the mountains daily for 5 or 6 days before stopping to resupply. Take a much needed shower, wash your only shirt and pants, and get back out for another 5 or 6 days. The little things add up and drain the body. Friends would come out to hike a section with me, but we had very different goals. One can push themselves knowing they'll soon be able to go home. It's an entirely different plan of hiking 1,000 to 2,000 miles that'll take months of steady walking up and down these pathways, carrying your home on your back the whole way. The little things cannot be avoided on long hikes. Cold and heat, drought and storms will come. They're unavoidable. We learn to embrace it all. When I began hiking north from Springer Mountain on the trail, the weather was amazing. I began hiking from mile 0 on March the 9th. It was still winter, but it felt like spring. The temperature was perfect. The skies were blue and dry. I enjoyed 7 days of beautiful rain-free hiking. And during one video, I remember asking, can I get through Georgia without getting rained on? Well, Mother Nature was listening, and she responded on day 8 with a resounding no. Mike and I had stopped at Low Gap Shelter for the night, and the shelter area was sort of crowded. The little shelter could comfortably sleep 6, but 8 hikers had arranged their nests for the night. Mike was number 8 and was making room for me, but I declined. It seemed too crowded. Of course, I hadn't seen crowded yet. Anyway, I pitched my tent near a wonderful stream. That stream provided much needed water for thirsty wanderers, and a sweet serenade for me as I slept beside it. I was sleeping comfortably when my tent was lit up by lightning, followed quickly by a crash of thunder. The storm had arrived. The rain pounded heavily on my thin tent walls. It was the first storm that I had experienced in this tent, and it proved itself to be trustworthy. What a relief. It was early, and there were no hints of sunrise, and it was raining. So I packed my gear, strapped my tent on top of my backpack so that its contents would remain dry, and striking out on the trail in the storm. I enjoyed the experience. These were bragging rights for stories that would be shared back home. Much of the day, the rain continued to soak me, and thankfully, everything inside my pack remained dry. Around 2 p.m., the rain eased to a near stop. I took advantage of the opportunity to have some lunch, and there was an opening with a log laid alongside the trailway. It was far enough off the path that I could sit and not block others who would pass me. And sitting on one end of the log, I made my usual noontime meal from a small tub of peanut butter, a package of honey, and a tortilla. These peanut butter burritos are a favorite of mine. And as I sat there, a small squirrel jumped on the other side of my organic bench, and he didn't seem to care that I was there at all. In fact, he chirped as if we were to have a conversation. And I talked to the squirrel, and he chirped his responses. Finally, I set the partially empty peanut butter tub between me and my friend, and he soon crawled over to the container. He didn't scamper off with it as I had anticipated. Instead, he sat and he cleaned the tub of its contents, chirping with me all the while. About 30 minutes passed, maybe more. The rain began again. My little friend and I said our goodbyes. I cleaned up the trash from lunch, including the now empty peanut butter tub. And once again, I started north. I enjoyed many meals with beautiful views, but that meal with the little squirrel was my favorite on the trail. Big things are not always better. Often, little things tell of great things to come. Early in April, spring was beginning to show itself. The tree limbs were covered in buds where leaves would soon burst out with the greenest greens of the year. Clumps of grass sprouted from the sides of the path, and in the April showers gave drink to the coming May flowers. I was walking from Yellow River toward Fontana Dam. The trail's familiar ups and downs kept me alert for loose and slippery rocks, which were plentiful through this section. I didn't look up much because the treacherous trail demanded my full attention. However, I was looking at the path before me and discerning the best way to go around or over rocks and boulders, and I was stopped by one little sight. I hadn't seen the beautiful vistas of the mountaintops extending to the horizon, or the beautiful valleys that were beginning to change to green from the trees and grasslands. The sight that caught my attention was a little sprig of a flower pushing up through the brown leaves. I don't know why my eyes were drawn to this single hint of life, but I stopped and kneeled down to get a better look. The little plant looked so vulnerable and small, but on its top was a blue bloom, and the petals of the bloom appeared as vulnerable and small as the stem they rested on. And after several minutes, it was time to move on. As I began to stand up, my eyes fell upon the field of tiny blue flowers that stretched out under the trees as far out to the ridge of the hill that I had been walking alongside. In my quest to see the big things, I nearly missed one of the most mesmerizing views of the day. A patch of the smallest blue flowers emerging from the leaves of the forest. Little things have great impact. They encourage us to continue steadfast on our journeys and to stay on the path ahead.
Wondering if you'd come wandering my way. If you ever get lost, or if the trail leads you astray, the music of the pack can always bring you back. I wonder, can we wander away? And I'll spread the word, and you beat the drum. Round up the troops